words that I want to show you. These are words that refer to Africans in the Arabic language. There's the word aswad. It comes from the word suad, which means, or Sud. That's where we get the word Sudan, all right? The blacks, or literally Beled Sudan, the land of the blacks. So we get the word al-aswad, the blacks. Then there's this very important word right here, abid. Abid started out meaning people who work for pay. Later it became people who were servants, and then it became slave, and now it is a term that is applied to all blacks as, i.e., slaves. All right, so you see this, the word like Abdullah, right? Abdullah, right? Abdullah, right? Which means the servant of Allah. I had one of my students at Northeastern tell me once that he was working in Zambia, someplace, and there were some Lebanese who were in charge of who were their managers and stuff. And he said they used to always refer to me as Abid, you know, Abid this, Abid that. And the problem that, you know, he said, when he asked them, what did that mean? They said, oh, it just means you a servant of God. I said, no, it didn't. They were calling you a slave. All right, and then that's the word jahali that I told you about, which means ignorant, and then kafur, from like kafir. Remember Mark Mathbane's book, Kafir Boy? Right, this is the same word, kafur. Kafur means an unbeliever, an infidel. This is one of the other terms that is used for black people. And then there's the word undur, which means race. And Loon, like remember the rapper whose name was Loon? Remember him? Some of y'all? Right, you know he's an Orthodox Muslim right now. If you didn't know, now you know. He's a serious Orthodox Muslim right now. But Loon means color or complexion. Then there's the word tamiz, which means to discriminate. And of course, this is the famous picture of the Arabs with the blacks on the slave ship. Now, the Arab slave traders, of course, in the middle there we have the great who? Tip-o-tip. Tip-o-tip. You know, and of course, one of the fundamental questions we ask when we see stuff like this is that we see all these blacks who are involved in the slave trade, and they say, well, you know, they're blacks enslaving other blacks, but you got to remember that these particular blacks don't think of themselves as Africans. They see themselves as Arabs. And this is very, very important for you to keep in mind. All right, if you will never understand the problem that's going on in some places such as Sudan or in Mauritania and some of these other places unless you understand that fundamental concept. Because as we'll see later on, and I'll talk about it later on, there's something called Islamization and there's something called Arabization. All right? In Arabization, it's like, you know, they come in, they attack your community, they kill all your men, they take your little children, especially your boys and your little girls, and then they take them off to special, what we might call indoctrination camps. The child comes into your community, they know that they are part of the Thur people. They're from Darfur, the house of the Thur people. All right? They take them to another place, an entirely different place, and they put them in this environment and have them work, and they train them in the Qur'an. They learn to recite Qur'an. They lose their language. What happens to them then is that they adopt a new language. Say that language is Arabic, which generally it's going to be. You see, a person who is an Arab or an Arab is someone first and foremost whose mother language is considered to be Arabic. Right, so now that the mother language has become Arabic and now you have lost your language, you also get a new name. They might call you Walid or something like that. You lost your forename. And on top of this, whatever you practice as a full person in your traditional belief system, now you practice Islam. You do Salat 5 times a day. You know, you may have in some form participate in Zakat, you know, giving alms or like a tax. All these types of things will get involved. So when you grow up and you're an adult, and it is time now to go out and engage in harb. Harb means war. Jihad does not mean war. It has ultimately come to mean war. That is, holy war in the interest of Islam. But its initial meaning has nothing to do with it. Its initial meaning means strife in its foundation form. And so they go out and do that, and so they'll come and attack their own former community because as far as they're concerned, the people in that community are no longer their people. These people are infidels. They're kufur. They can be attacked and they can be destroyed because they're not my people. I'm gonna give you, I got some pictures. I'll show you some examples later on of that. But here's some ideas of the routes and stuff, the slave trade of the Arabs. Because as much as we like to talk about the European slave trade, the Arabs were involved in the slave trade at least 1,000 years before the Europeans even thought about getting involved. And on top of that, let me make it real clear to you, that in the early days of much of the Arab slave trade, when they were engaging in slavery, they were enslaving white people. They used to enslave some women called the Circassians. The Circassians are the people who used to live in what we call southern Russia today, what they call Georgia and southern Russia. And they had a real problem with calling them Georgians. Guess why? And saying that they were enslaved because we had Georgia in the United States. So you couldn't say that. So the Circassian women were the women that they used to pick up and put in the harem, which means a place that is sacred, holy as it were, set aside. And they would attack a lot of them. You know, the Christians be out there and they're corsairs and stuff like that. They'd be floating around the Mediterranean. And then, you know, the Arabs would come along and they're dhows and stuff like that and gangster them, you know, like the young Somalis are doing right now, except they got bigger ships to try to attack. Right? And they gangster them and take their possessions, namely the women, kill off the men, and then sometimes they would take the men too, turn them into eunuchs. You know, and when you can't do nothing, then stuff get done to you. All right, so don't think for 1 minute that pedophilia is not something that does not exist among Arabs. It does. You know, it does. So, all right, let's look at the East African slave trade. All right, the Indian Ocean, from the early Islamic conquest of the 8th century to the European voyages of discovery, was essentially an Arab lake dominated by armed Arab traders, contested at times by the Persians, because the Persians wanted to be involved in this trade. Now, it's very, very important to them. You know, it's like when you look at the news today and you look at Iraq, you very seldom see pictures of Basra, where there are lots of blacks. Oh, but they'll show you Baghdad. Not that there aren't blacks in Baghdad, but they don't show you those. All right? They don't show you those. They don't show you that because, see, they still perpetuate the idea that there's only one type of people out here. There are European or kind of European types. And so that's a real big issue, I think, that exists in our orientation and our understanding. Even in places like the Gaza and what they call the West Bank, there are lots of blacks there who are what we think of as Palestinians, or Philistinia, as they like to call it in Arabic. There are lots of them there. But we don't see them on the news. Why? That ain't good. I think in the last Olympics, the one person that the Palestinians had in the Olympics was a young sister. She was a distance runner. They don't like to show those people out there, you know, because again, you know, it's like when Gamal Abdel Nasser became the president of what is really known as the United Arab Republic. We call it Egypt because we know it's Kemet. But they call it the United Arab Republic. Look on any good map and you'll see Egypt and you'll see UAR. That's what they think of it as. That's why you never see Zahi Hawass when he's on TV freaking out and doing what he does and talking about ancient Kemet, ever refer to the ancient Kemites as his people, as his ancestors. He'd never say that because he knows they're not. But then people ain't hearing that because they saying, well, those people over there, they're living in Egypt, they must be the Egyptians. All right? It's like people living here. You must live in America. You must be one of the Americans unless you done read the work of Krepkor and what is an American. When he say an American is a European or the descendant of a European. Marinate on that for a minute. All right? So, it says, the principal port of embarkation for Africans taken by Arab slavers was Zanzibar. And of course, there was Zanzibar, Pemba Island, Kilwa. There were several of them along the East Coast. And not a lot is known about Zanzibar and the slave trade until the 19th century. And by the time when the British Royal Navy moved in against the Arabs in the Indian Ocean, of course, the British Royal Navy was going in, attacking everybody to prevent them from being in the slave trade because they had gotten out. And this meant that people were making money and they weren't making none. And, you know, they're funny like that. You know, if they don't have no use for you, they get rid of you. They stop your business. You know, it's like immigration. You know, they're trying to, you know, trying to find a way not to have any use for all these people who they consider to be immigrants. And if we're not careful, they're going to start looking at us and saying we immigrants too.